Okay, we're finishing up in Halacha Aleph, Sim Kuf Halacha Aleph. So we'll talk about two different things that are one part of that question is related, and that's what's connected to our din, beer and sake. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. But
Japanese
sake, okay. Yes,
oh.
yes. So first we'll do beer.
That's a sake.
Right. So first we'll do beer. Beer. The obvious reason to talk about beer in this din is because, of course, it talks about shecher. The whole thing is all about different types of shecher. But more specifically is because, let's just give a reminder. This is an old screen you've seen from beforehand, from the beginning, our introduction, that the way you make beer is you take barley. The barley gets broken down into what we'll call sugar. In non-scientifically, we'll call it a sugar. Add yeast to it, makes alcohol. That's how you have alcohol. And then if you add hops to the alcohol, you end up with what we call beer. Okay? And if you remember the chart, the point being is that everything, the green on the bottom, the sugar turning and yeast turning to alcohol, that's every single alcoholic beverage. What you put in barley is how you get the sugar. That depends on what you're trying to make. You'll see later. But
not hops after you make alcohol?
Yeah. Or before. I put it there, I didn't mean it the time that you put it in. What I mean is it's a flavoring added on. It has nothing to do with the making of the alcohol. Hops don't become alcohol. Hops is just a flavoring.
I'm sorry, how does barley become into sugar?
It gets broken down. Barley is a starch.
With water?
In the case of barley, you just put it into warm water and it begins to break down by itself. It's like turning. It begins. It germinates. It's like corn becoming corn syrup. Barley, it starts to grow, so to speak, and it turns itself into barley syrup.
I don't take some barley from the bag and put it into water.
No, it won't work in your house because in your house they've taken off too much of the outside. It won't work. If you take regular barley and you put it into water, warm water, that's what happens. Yeah, it turns into a sweet syrup, like malt syrup. Like if you think Yashin, that's what malt syrup is. Okay, that sweet syrup is malt, or like malt in Rice Krispies. Okay, so that's how you make beer. Okay, this is an old screen. This is how you make beer. Okay, so we're going to see. We're going to do it quickly. You'll see. We're not going to talk about the details because there are 6 questions that a person has to think about in making beer. And the first one is the connection to our din. Aside from again that talks about shecher all over the place. And the first one is there a question of Bishul akum? Okay, in order there's a cooking of that barley gets cooked, gets heated up to make it usable, and this din is the place where people talk about it. And that Gemara, the Tosfos in that Gemara, talk about why is it not Bishul akum? If the people cooked the barley to make this product, why is it not Bishul akum? So briefly, the reason this Tosfos gives 2 reasons, brought here in Poskim over here also, is either because beer is not Ola Shulchan Lachem, or because the beer is considered a tuffle to the water. Just like you make a shahakal on beer, you don't make a mazonis on beer. It's considered to be flavored water rather than a extract from the beer and the extract from the barley, and therefore, for those 2 reasons, it doesn't need Bishul akum for both those same reasons. It's a shiloh and peskin. Which one is? So they talk about it. So what we're going to say it briefly is because when we go to Sim Kuf Gimel, halacha sort of Aleph, but also Beis in Gimel, chapter 28, if you have the book, we spoke about it then. So I'm not going to repeat that. Okay, so that's the first thing. The first thing is Bishul akum. Okay. Okay, the next thing to consider. Yeah, put up a big screen, right? Okay, the next one is, we're not going to say it again, don't worry. The next one is if it comes from Eretz Yisroel. Okay, so we always assume that if it comes from Eretz Yisroel, you have to be worried that the barley and the hops have the mitzvahs of Tluis Baritz. You need to be mafreshum shemaishers. But we've recently been told by someone, a reputable person, that's not true. That at least at this point in Eretz Yisroel, all the barley and hops is imported from other places. So we'll see about other general Kashrus questions, that maybe if there are fancier beers that have other ingredients, you have shilas of Trumas and measures. But at this point, from this reputable person told us, person who lives in Eretz Yisrael, that there's not a concern that those things come indeed have fresh Trumas and measures, which was good news. It makes it easier.
What would be the factor? If it's roish, or you mean more than roish?
This person made it like it's 0, like it's just not the way the business runs. Okay, I don't live there. I don't know. Okay, number 3. The third thing about it is, aside from putting in barley and hops, you put in yeast. Okay, now this question of putting in yeast into something is not specific to beer. Every single alcoholic beverage has yeast in it. Once in a while, the yeast is natural. It grows in the product. Like in wine, you could get yeast off the peel, in theory. In certain places, you get the yeast is a natural thing. But just that everybody puts in yeast, and that's a question. Could you buy buy beer, what's the question? Is the yeast kosher? Does it make a difference? In Eretz Yisroel, we're going to talk about that in halacha vav. Okay? We'll talk about it in halacha vav. Okay? So I'm just telling you that it's not. This is not specific to beer. Every alcoholic beverage has got yeast in it.
Added yeast. That's not.
Usually it's added. It could be natural to it also. Natural, of course, then you don't have to think about it, about it. But nowadays, almost everybody adds it in. They don't take it off the peel. So it has a shayla, Eretz Yisroel halacha vav. Okay. Ingredients. The traditional way to make beer has only 4 ingredients, as I told you: barley, yeast, hops, and water. Okay, those are the 4 ingredients to make beer. There's a really long word in German. Hops is a flour. It's a flour that makes the beer taste bitter. Okay, so the hops is it's a plant. That's the name of the plant. So this is long German word. The long German word that Akiva can pronounce it. He's not here today. Akiva can pronounce, which is that you're supposed to make it out of only these 4 ingredients. Okay, which is fine. These 4 ingredients are relatively straightforward. Some other people have started. What's going on is that some people add other ingredients because they think it makes a better beer. Fine. Some people, what's happened is that if you're a little guy and you want to compete with the big guys, then you have to distinguish yourself. Okay, so the big guys are good at making traditional regular beers. If you want to say, no, I'm special because I know how I can do something unusual, so then part of being unusual is to say, I put in unusual things. Okay, so if you put in simpler things like wheat or different different kinds of other flours that give a flavor. Kiva was just telling me this morning about a guy puts in coriander and orange peels. Okay, so coriander and orange peels are kosher. Okay, so the Seder, things are straightforward enough. So it's different. It's not a regular beer, but it's not. It shouldn't be a Kashrus question. But things get more complicated when people start adding in other things. Like there's a thing called oyster stout. Okay, that's beer made with oysters. Okay, or what?
Things disappeared.
Oh, sorry. Okay, oysters, or there's other ones that are made with milk. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, you can't deal with the technology now. Milk, which is now. There's actually a difference. Just for your curiosity, there's a difference between oyster stout and milk stout. The difference being is that milk has lactose in it. Okay, lactose is a sugar, so in the lactose that you put in there will actually create alcohol. There'll be alcohol made from the lactose. The milk will actually, or the thing that you put in will actually turn into beer, as opposed to if you put in oysters. Oysters are not going to turn into alcohol. They just give a flavor. Okay? But that's just a technicality. But anyway, so there's other things. People put in flavors into beer. Okay, so
They put in allergens?
Yeah. There would be allergens. So what I was going to say to you is that the kind of people who put these things in, people don't put in oysters and don't tell you about it. Okay, if you're going to the whole ASIC to put in oysters, you're going to say, my special beer has got this, I'll say it's got the secret ingredient. Or more like, I'll tell you what it has. It's got crabs, okay? I have crabs or lobsters or all kinds of interesting things that people put in. Okay? It is potentially, I didn't say it's not possible, it is potentially possible. But it's all of a sudden you have to be more alert. You see a thing that says that this thing has lobsters, that puts in lobsters in it, so then that's not such a simple beer. Okay. Next thing is, okay, Isinglass. Okay? What in the world is Isinglass? Okay? That I believe is a sturgeon. Okay? Not kosher fish. Okay? So Isinglass is, after you finish making your beer, you have the whole beer is finished, then in the protein floating around inside the beer, and it makes it cloudy. Okay? It makes the beer look fuzzy and doesn't look like as clean as it's supposed to look. Okay? As clear as people like it to taste. So you put something in, it's called a flocculant, okay? A flocculant, which is something that, what it does like this, it collects all of the protein clumps together, get all the protein to clump together, then the protein falls to the bottom or falls to the top, and you can get it out. And it makes your beer clear. Okay, so the traditional way to do it was from the bladder of a fish. It's called Isinglass. That's from, and sturgeon is a common fish that's used. Sturgeons are not kosher. Isinglass is made from this tray fish. It's made from the tray fish. So that also has a question to it whether that affects the status of the beer. And we spoke about that when we learned in Hilchos Tanoim in Sim Pedal and Sim Yud Gimel. That sefer is not out yet; it'll be chapter 44. If you're curious, that's coming. But we spoke about that then, whether it affects it and whether you're allowed to buy it, whether you're allowed to l'chatchila. So that's another question that there is nowadays. That's a question. Nowadays, it's not so common for people to use Isinglass. More people just use chemicals. The chemicals have their own channels in them. Okay, the flocculants. Okay, and the
picture on the thing has fins and scales. So.
Okay, so you can try to, if you can peel any scales off that fish, then you can have it. Okay, I don't think you get any off the screen. Okay, I don't think it's kosher. Okay, and the last is kalim issues. Okay, kalim issues means like this: if the company, your beer is clean, your beer has nothing in it that would have a shayla. Everything is simple and straightforward. Okay, but the person before you, the beer that they made before you, had oysters in it. Okay, or had something in it that could potentially make the kalim treif. So now the beer that I'm looking at has the ingredients are simple. There's no question. None of these questions come up. But there's a question, the kalim that it was made on. You may remember we dealt with this once in a very particular case. Akim deals with this every day, but we dealt with it in a bigger case when Budweiser started making a beer that had clams in it. Okay, and the question was how that affects all the rest of the beers that they make. Okay, they make all kinds of other beers. So their regular beer, you say, wait a second, the regular beer, what could be wrong with it? You say, wait a second, but because a minute beforehand they made clams. And the questions are two parts. One is on the making of it, the parts of the process that are hot, and also they pasteurize it. At least in bigger companies, they pasteurize it. They put it into a can, and then they pasteurize it. They put it in a tunnel pasteurizer. So equipment, and part of our recommendations for what beers we do or don't let have to do with the kalim, which is to say is, if it looks like the kind of a place where they may have made on the same kalim something that's would trafe up the kalim, then that's a reason to not recommend the beer, even if the ingredients in this one are straightforward enough. Okay? Now,
do like an allergy.
So in thinking about whether the kalim make a difference, okay, there's a couple of things to think about. Okay, the first is maybe it's bottle. Okay, if the kalim are big enough, it's pretty hard to make blias. In a big piece of equipment, the blias will probably not affect the next food. Okay, so that depends on the size of the place. Is it a little pub that's guy's making this in the back of his store? He's making beer, or is it a huge operation where he's using bigger tanks? Okay, then there's Hanan. You have to remember the treif beer is not pure clams. It's not all made out of lobsters. It's only a small amount of it. So how much does that pull to the next food? And this is called the parish, which is, let's say there's a certain amount of bottles that it can make treif. Okay, but who said that the bottle that I got is the treif one? Maybe I got the kosher one. Okay, then
we spoke about that.
when the company makes 1,000 bottles of beer, okay, there's enough beer to make 500 of them treif. So
and then if you go with Hanan, and then
So Hanan plays into that. Okay, Hanan plays into that. Okay, so these are just okay. Then there's Hagala. Maybe the company, when they clean up between one product and the next, either for allergens like David said, or just not, they clean up between one and the other. So maybe that qualifies Hagala. Or last is maybe it's Amy Ben Yomer. Okay, which is you say, come on, the company's run all the time, but they don't run treif all the time. So they may run 5 days. They may run 5 days for sure if they close for Shabbos. But even without that, they run every day of the week. They don't run treif every day of the week. Okay, so these are all kinds of things to think about, which is, even if the kalim are an issue, is it how much of an issue really is? Okay.
They do light beer. Are they going anything else to it?
When they do light beer, there are other ingredients. There are potentially other ingredients. The light itself is not what makes a difference. No, it's not going to make a difference.
I thought you might add chodosh to the list.
Okay, that's a good point. I should have thought of that. Okay. Right now we're just like Weimer. We're safe at this point. No Yoshem problem. Okay. So I'm sorry.
That included on his list.
Whose list?
The Kaddish list. The Yoshem list.
Does he talk about beer? Yes. Yes, he does. Yes. And that's all. It takes time to make. Right. It takes time to make beer. So right, it's not as much of a shot. Mr. Herman. Right. Okay. So let's go to our next thing. Okay, I thought this was going to take less time than it did. We ran through this, but okay, our next thing to talk about is sake, or however you pronounce it. Okay, sake. That's what we can't pronounce it, sake. Okay, so sake, this is again an old school we had, which is, it's the same, all alcoholic beverages are made the same way. You start with something that creates your sugar, in this case it's rice, you turn it into alcohol, and then, voila, then you have sake. Okay, sake we call it a rice wine, which is to say is you make the alcohol, and it takes about 30 days. They have this really unusual way that they make it, a whole very specialized process. Instead of what we call yeast, it uses something called koji yeast. Okay, for us right now it's not important what that is. For today that's not important. And we're going to talk about the different parts of the question about whether you could eat sake, and the reason why Akiva's not here is because about a lot of what you're about to hear. just about everything you're about to hear is Chazar Sashir from Akiva. So I said, Akiva, I don't know if you want to come listen to me repeat your Torah. So I'm going to tell you a lot of stuff, but really, Akiva, who's been to Japan to see the places, he took a course to become a certified sake professional. I know he knows pronouncing that better. But whatever he is, okay, so let's go through the different things. Now, before I tell you the questions, there are going to be 3 questions. First, like this. There's 2 ways that people who make sake measure the quality of the sake. Okay? And that is like this. The first is, are there any additives to the thing? Is it just the rice wine, or is it other things? And what we care about is, do they add alcohol to it or not? Okay? And they give these names to, I'll do what I can to pronounce them. The junmai means the more pure. It doesn't have anything else added into it. Okay? There's a technical name, Aruch, if we pronounce that right, which has added things in it. You won't see that on a bottle. They don't write, this is garbage. Okay? They don't write that on the bottle. Okay? But if they're junmai, then they'll write that on the bottle. Okay? And then the second part is like this.
That's the better one.
The junmai is the better. It's more pure. It's just the rice alcohol. The other thing is, when you make sake, what happens is, the only thing that ferments is the sugar. The starch turns into sugar and that ferments. The other parts, the oil, the fat, and the protein that's in the rice don't ferment. Right? The only thing that ferments is sugar. Or starch. Same thing. Sugar and starch, the same thing. So what they do is, they mill off the outside of the rice. They scrape off, essentially, the outer layers of the rice to leave just the center of the rice, just the starch. Okay, the point being is, when you make the more you mill off, the better, the more pure it is. It's just starch, without any protein, without any fat into it, and it makes a better product. Okay, so the more you mill off, the more they scrape off the rice, the better it is. Okay, so these things of hanjizo and jinjo and janjinjo, however you pronounce these things, the more you take off, those are different percentages that you took off, the more you take off, the better it is, which is, it's a higher quality. Okay? So,
The second one is the worst.
which is the second one?
That's the worst.
Hanjozo? Arutin is the worst. There's 2 ways to measure how good it is. One is that they have added ingredients to it. That's the top group of those. So the Arutin is the worst one. The second is, there's a different measure of the quality of it, which is how much of the outer layer of the rice did you take off. The more you take off, the better. The bottom, the lowest one, you're right, is the bottom. That's good.
Lettuce is the top is
Right. So for example, if you have a sake that's marked as, it's saying on the bottom, it's junmai jingo. Okay, that means there's no added alcohol. That's the junmai part of it, and at least 40% of the rice was taken off. Okay, so that's what that title. When it says on the sake bottle, it says this is junmai jingo. That means they're describing to you the quality. I didn't pronounce that right. They're describing to you the quality of this thing. That's the quality of this rice, of this sake, is the following. Okay. When the way they, I'm mentioning one more piece that you need to know before we go on, and that is the way you make the sake. Everybody who makes it, almost everyone who Akiva knows about, every traditional person who makes it, is the rice is not cooked in water. The rice is cooked with steam. Okay, that's where the cooking of the rice happens in steam. Okay, it has to do with making a better product.
Pure steam.
Okay.
Live steam.
Yes. So now, so there are 3 things we have to think about. 3 things to think about for whether a sake is kosher. The first thing is the ingredients. Okay, the ingredients usually are rice, yeast, water, and koji. Okay, those ingredients we don't.
And koji? What he says.
Right, the koji helps break down the rice.
What's a koji?
It's a kind of fermentation. It's a kind of way of making a fermentation. Okay, it's too complicated. They do it on wheat bran. I'll fancy how they make a fermentation. Okay, that's Chinese,
Food?
Japanese stuff. No, it's just a style.
It's an ingredient.
It's mold that comes off of a koji fermentation. So we just call it a koji bean story. So it's a Pesach question, not a year-round question. So the yeast comes from one place. There's one place that makes the yeast for everybody in Japan, and these ingredients are assumed to be straightforward enough. Okay, some of them, as I showed you before, and some of them have alcohol added in. Okay? There were those who argued that they're bringing alcohol from New Zealand, which could be made from dairy. Okay, Japan is not so far from New Zealand, relatively. New Zealand's got a lot of dairy alcohol. It doesn't seem like that's a real shayla. The people who went there say that's not real. That's not real concern. And the alcohol is not considered to be a shayla. We assume it comes from beets or molasses. Okay. The other thing they could add, but they can't add in flavors into them. Okay, there's such a thing as coconut sake. Okay, I'm not a drinker, so I don't know what to tell you. But there's such a thing as flavors being added on. If there's a flavor added on, then obviously it needs hashgacha. Okay, but it would say that wouldn't be missing into it. If it had a flavor, then it would tell you what that is. On the other side, the other thing is equipment, which beforehand that was a bigger deal. Over here, it's not such a serious concern. Okay, the process of making sake is so specific and so unique that it's not the kind of thing you can make wine in the same kettle. It's nothing like that at all, and therefore we're not so worried about equipment channels. Okay, the big question for sake is Bishul akum. Okay, the big question is it Bishul akum? Because in order to make this rice wine, you have to cook the rice first. Okay, you cook the rice, you end up with a big pot of rice. Okay, now you have the big pot of rice, now you turn it into this wine. So we have a big pot of rice, which is Bishul akum. So then the rice is Bishul akum. The drink you make afterwards should be also. Okay, so this
steam doesn't make a difference.
I'm going to talk about that. Give me a chance. I'm going to tell you. There's a question. The first thing I say, there's a question. There's going to be 4 potential reasons why it's not Bishul akum. Okay, you guys are too smart for me. What can I tell you? Okay, 4 potential reasons why it's not Bishul akum. Okay, the first one is why are we talking about in this simon, in this sif, and that's because I told you, like beer. The reason why beer is not Bishul akum is because the beer is considered tuffle. The barley is considered tuffle to the water. Okay, or the barley is not oil shulchan, or the beer is not oil shulchan. So seemingly, you could say the same thing about the sake also. Maybe the sake should be considered mutter because it's tuffle to the water. It's part of what makes a liquid beverage.
What's the side of the head?
What?
My beer, when is the Bishul akum take place? When you warm up, when you put it to the warm
When you cook the barley.
you can buy it. Okay, but then the barley is not Bishul akum, it's mutter. And you cook some the ikar of the water. Over here, taking an item potentially could be also already.
That's exactly what you're saying, which is it's not the same. It's not simply not the same. That's correct. It's not the same because over here you took the pot of finished rice. Okay, you took the pot of finished rice, and now you did something else with it. So you took a tray of rice. The rice was Bishul akum. You did something else out of it, as opposed to in the beer. You cook the barley in water, and then you use the water. You're taking the water out of the thing.
You eat 50% milled rice.
We're going to get that in a second. Okay, that's going to be number 4. We're going to get that in number 4. We'll get that number 4. Okay? But the argument to say that it's the same as the beer is not so strong. There are those who have argued, there are those who argued that it's one big process. Today I cook the rice, and tomorrow it turns into sake, and that's one long process. And since it's one long process, so I didn't make rice, which is usher, and then turn it into liquid sake, which is mutter, but I just did one big process. Okay, it's a weak argument in this case, seemingly because it's not one long process. You make the rice, and then you take the pot of rice and you go do something else with it. It's not like you put it into a machine and you put it on the left side and it comes out on the right side as finished product. Okay, so the liquid, this is not seemingly not such a great head. Okay, the second is a much more meaningful head, which is, I told you, all the rice, they always cook it with steam. Many hashgachas, seriously included, say that if something is cooked with live steam, it's not a problem with Bishul akum. It's a variation of Ishun that the Shulchan speaks about, and therefore
It's in the book.
And therefore it's mutter. So that's also in the book. Very good. I was about to say that. It's a chapter 45. Very good. So we spoke at Siman Kufik Gimel, Halachi Gimel, about Ishun over there. So you can read that all about over there. So I'm not going to repeat that. But that's a very reasonable reason for why it should be mutter, which is it's always cooked in live steam, so you're off the hook. Okay? Number three, specialized equipment. Okay? In chapter 13, over there, which is in Halacha Gimel, we spoke about Rav Moshe has a shita that says that when you do cooking for something in a non-personal way, meaning in a factory type setting, and you do it in kelim that are different, very different from what you have at home, then that's not Bishul akum. Okay, you can go listen to that tape or read chapter 13 to find out why. Okay, that's what Moshe said. If it's made in specialized kelim, then it's okay. So over here, the traditional way to make sake is in a wooden pot. Okay, and this wooden pot's got holes in the bottom of it, and the steam rises up through the bottom of these holes, and it cooks the rice that's sitting inside of there. So everybody would. It's raised up because underneath it the steam is rising up. It's supposed to rise through the bottom of this thing and cook it. So everybody who looks at that says, yeah, that's when Ramosha said he did in special kelim, that's special kelim. No person has a wooden pot with holes in the bottom in their house. Okay, that's unusual. That's what Ramosha had in mind. So those who are samach on Ramosha, or for example the OU who samach on Ramosha together with steam, they were good. They said that's not a problem. They wouldn't have been samach on steam by itself, but steam with this thing of specialized kelim, they were fine with that. But that's only how some of them are made. Other sake is made in a stainless steel pot. Okay, and the stainless steel pot's got holes in the bottom of it also, so the steam can rise up through it. Okay, well that the Isra B'Shefter, Akiva Isra B'Shefter about that. He said no. He says that's basically a steamer. Okay, I don't know if you have at home, you have a steamer. Okay, that's what it is. It's a pot with holes in the bottom of it for steaming vegetables. Okay, so he says it's basically just a big steamer. That's not considered specialized camera. Just a big version of what you have at home. Okay.
What's funny enough?
No, is it different? Is it different from what you have at home as opposed to just being bigger? Of course, they have a bigger pot than you. So in your house, you have that same pot.
In what way does it have to be different?
I don't have a specific thing to tell you how it's different. It just has to strike you as being different. So this wooden pot with holes in the bottom of it, that's nothing like you have. You know what I mean? So this metal pot, the stainless steel one.
About potato chips?
No, nothing to do. It's not a printed tshuva. It's not a printed tshuva in English Moshe. No, it's a different thing. You'll read chapter 13 again. Okay, so. Okay, so that's right. But today we're doing a lot of that. Okay, now the other thing is, but there's a third way to cook it, and that's the more commercial way to do it, which is on a conveyor belt. Okay, they put it onto a conveyor belt and they pass it through a tunnel, and in the tunnel it gets steamed in there. And as it passes along the belt, that it gets steamed in there. As you can imagine, that's much more efficient and much more commercially viable than one of these kind of things. This is how you do it traditionally. But if you want to do it commercially, then you do it in the conveyor belt. We assume that the conveyor belt qualifies for Moshe's special kelim. Okay, so then this is all going on. The reason why I'm going to mention Rosh Hashanah again in a second is that this was all going on. Akiva was about to speak about this at some kind of a Kashrus conference. I don't remember exactly why it was. So the day before him, he wanted to finish up these points. He spoke to Rosh Hashanah. So he said to him, "What do you think? If I go to the store and I buy one, and again, this is not for hashkacha. If you're giving hashkacha, you'd say, is it in the wood container? Fine. Is it in the stainless steel one? No good. If it's in the conveyor belt, it's okay. But what about me, the consumer, walking into a store, and I don't know how they made it." So Shachta said, if you want to read it, if you can read that quickly, he said the assumption is that if you're buying a product, particularly in America, coming from Japan, then you're probably getting something from somebody who made it commercially, who made it in the with this conveyor belt type of system, where you could assume that it's qualified that it came in the specialized kelim, and there's not a problem with Bishul akum that reason also. Okay. Now our last reason. I know you finished reading by now, right? Okay.
So the very small guys and the very big guys won't have a problem.
Right. It's not in between people. Without again, what Rav Shachta is saying is that to get to us, if we'd be giving hashkacha, you have to pay attention. If the OU would be giving hashkacha, they have to pay attention to which way it was made. But for the consumer, he said, don't worry about it. Now, the CRC pump would not worry about it because we would have been monitored no matter what if it was cooked in live steam. But the OU will only do it if it's steam and specialized kelim, so then he would have to pay attention if he was giving hashkacha. Okay, now, the last factor is, the other part of what Tyson says is this Oila Shulchan Aruch? Now, the question is not whether the sake is Oila Shulchan Aruch. The question is whether the rice, when it was cooked, is it Oila Shulchan Aruch? So,
the sake definitely is Oila Shulchan Aruch.
That's a question. Once it gets to the sake state point, okay, that's a good question. That's a good question. I'll say it's not. I'm not sure. So you're saying is if the finished product is, then we maybe have then we would consider that it is Oila Shulchan Aruch. I'm going to put that on the side. I don't know.
Well,
remember I told you that in order to make sake, you scrape off the outer layers of the rice. Okay? In fact, some companies use specialized sake rice, not your regular rice, that grows with a lot of starch. These small little pieces that go with a lot of starch. But even the guys who take regular rice, they scrape off all the protein and the fat. So if you think about it, what you're doing is you're taking away the tastier parts of the rice and leaving just the starchy parts of the rice. So there were those who argued, and they said this rice that you're going to be cooking in the pot, you're not cooking plain rice. It's not a pot of rice that you could have in your house. First, you scraped off all the tastier parts of it, leaving behind just the starchier parts of it. So chances are that rice is not going to be Orosh Lachem. You wouldn't serve that kind of rice to somebody because it doesn't taste like good rice. Again, you scraped off good parts of it to leave just the starch. So there was argument to say it's not Orosh Lachem. So, when he went to Japan, when he was in the factories, he tasted the rice. Okay? He tasted the rice coming off of when it was in the rice state, when it had been cooked into rice, before it had been turned into sake. To say, is this rice that we have over here, after it was steamed, is it Orosh Lachem? They scraped off all the I don't even remember, maybe they made it Bishul, so I don't know why they tasted it. What did you say? Oh, that's right, because it was mutter because it was steamed. That's true. It was mutter him because it was steamed. But the question was, is it Orosh Lachem? Okay, is it Orosh Lachem at that point? So he tasted it, and I tasted it. He brought some home for me. He tasted it, and it was awful. Okay, it was pasty and disgusting, dry and awful. I mean, he said, no one ever served this stuff.
But you got a week later.
So wait a second. So he said, no one ever served this stuff. What?
He made some here, don't we?
Wait, I'm getting to that. He said, no one ever served this stuff. This is not possible. This is Orosh Lachem. But that's what he said. It was like, it tastes like rubber. Okay, what happened? But to which Rabbi Cooper, who was the OU Mashgiach in Japan, he was in Eretz Yisroel, he's an OU Mashgiach in Japan, who took a kiva around to see these places. He said to him, no, you're not making an honest judgment at this point, because the people, when they cook the rice to make sake, they only cook it k'machal ben drusai. They don't have to cook it all the way. They only have to cook it. They're not cooking it because they want to eat it. They're cooking it so they can work for the next part of the process. Now, the thing is, if you cook food, if a guy cooks it k'machal ben drusai, it's usher. The food is usher. Even though everyone understands that k'machal ben drusai, it's not Orosh Lachem. Food that's partially cooked, you don't serve it as Shulchan. That's obvious. The answer is, what it means is, if the guy cooked it k'machal ben drusai, think about what it would be if he would cook it all the way. Is this food, that extra part that has to be cooked is considered like a little, not like adding salt. You just have to do a little bit more, then that's considered that the guy cooked the food, which is Orosh Lachem. Even though in the form, when he walked out the door, it was only k'machal ben drusai. So Rabbi Cooper said, if you want to see if this stuff is really Orosh Lachem, don't taste it in its partially cooked form, finish the cooking, and then taste it. Okay? So that's what he did. So he took the rice that he had brought back, and he finished off the cooking. And we tasted it, as did Rabbi Reese. He brought it to Rabbi Reese to taste it, and it was perfectly fine. It tasted like perfectly fine rice. Okay? It was 100%. There was nothing wrong with it. So Rabbi Cooper was correct in that assumption. That said, the reason why to you it tastes like rubber is because you're tasting it when it's k'machal ben drusai. And so that means that even though they scraped off these outer layers, there was nothing wrong with the rice. The rice was perfectly fine. In which case, which is to say, is that this tzad, to say that it's not Orosh Lachem, did not fly. Okay, it did not turn out to be a reasonable chashash. So for us, the reasons to say that it's mutter is either we would be matter just stam because of the steam. The specialized equipment, we're not samach on that by itself, but others are samach on those betzir. So just to summarize what we stand with the sake, that if unless someone adds flavors, they would notice if they're flavors, then we say they're all recommended, they're all okay. The people who want to be extra careful, would get the better versions of it. I remember all the Japanese words, the better versions of it, the hanjazo, jinjo, whatever. Some of those better versions that we have reason that there's nothing added to them, and there's more scraped off it. Some of those better have an advantage, but really all of them would be okay.